The Giants' offense erupts again as they destroy the Pittsburgh Pirates, and these rookies, Casey Schmitt and Patrick Bailey, have just sparked this team, and they're playing really good baseball, and it has them in really good position where they can take advantage and put themselves in a good spot to make the postseason.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube. Check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. And coming up on today's show, so much to get to. The Giants' offense erupted again. Austin Slater came off the injured list and made an immediate impact. And there's a serious roster crunch looming, like serious, severe. And so we're going to speculate about how they're going to handle that. But just getting to the offensive eruption and how the rookies, Casey Schmitt and Patrick Bailey, are largely, they're involved. They're not like the only two guys carrying this team, but there's no doubt that when Casey Schmitt showed up, things started to turn around for the Giants, and just that youthful presence and having him do well. And same thing with Patrick Bailey, who, a lot of people were skeptical about his bat, especially from the right side, but man, he's done nothing but hit and do a good job leading the staff. And that's going to get into when we talk about the roster crunch. We're talking about guys like Joey Bart, and suddenly you're looking at Bailey, you've got Sabol, and you're talking about Bart. And so a lot to get into there. But just yesterday, the Giants, they win 14-4. They have 18 hits in this game. They strike out 3 times. For all my doom and gloomers who were ready to declare the Giants the worst team ever because of their 37% strikeout rate 3 games into the season, it's gotten more under control. They still are like second highest in terms of strikeout rate, but yesterday 3 strikeouts, 4 walks, more walks than strikeouts, and 18 hits for 14 runs. They had a 5-run second inning, a 1-run fourth, and then an 8-run seventh, which was their largest inning in years. And just overall, the team is, since April 22nd, 22-13 is their record since April 22nd. That's a .629 winning percentage. It's funny we say percentage, but that's a decimal. A 62.9 winning percentage. And in May, pretty much that same winning percentage at 63%, they are 17-10. And so they've just been on a roll, and their record now is 28-26. And I just want to kind of take a look at some of the overall offensive numbers, but also not just factoring in offense, but also base running and defense. Basically everything that goes into the non-pitchers on the team. How are they performing? According to Fangraphs, quite well. The Giants' position players as a whole rank 7th in Major League Baseball in Fangraphs wins above replacement. And wins above replacement is pretty simple. Like I said, it's talking about offense, base running, and defense. And doing the proper adjustments, like on defense, like it's more valuable to be a good defensive shortstop than it is to be a good defensive first baseman. So it's making those adjustments properly. And according to Fangraphs, the Giants position players have been the 7th best group in all of Major League Baseball. And in the National League, there's the Dodgers, the Braves, the Cardinals, who have, this crazy bad record, but come in 1 tick ahead of the Giants here, and then the Giants, and then the D-backs below the Giants, the Mets below the Giants, the Padres way below the Giants. Padres, my gosh, .221 batting average, 315 on base, 385 slugging. Simply put, the Padres have been a bad offensive team, just a below average offensive team. And anyway, the Giants, their offense has been significantly better than average. And when we look at some of the individual performers, we can look at a number of guys. I mean, Thairo Estrada, who's on the injured list currently and factors into that roster crunch when he comes back, has obviously been really good for the Giants this year. J.D. Davis has been really good for the Giants this year. LaMonte Wade Jr., really good. Michael Conforto has come around and been good. Mike Yastrzemski has been solid. He had that good start. IL was slow to get it back, but then he's kind of gotten it back recently. Blake Sabol has done well. Casey Schmitt, I want to specifically get into him and Patrick Bailey. And I don't know, Mitch Haniger has come around. He's hot. Like, he's finally figured it out. It started seemingly on the road trip, and he contributed again yesterday. There were 5 different Giants players who had 3 hits in yesterday's game, including Mitch Haniger, who went 3 for 5 with 2 doubles, I believe. Yeah, 2 doubles. And the Giants hit 2 homers, Austin Slater and Patrick Bailey. So let's just talk about Casey Schmitt and Patrick Bailey for a minute, just to describe what they've done and how they've energized this team. Casey Schmitt, he's only played in 20 games. It feels like he's been here longer, but only 20 games, and he's hitting .342 with a .351 on base, which, when you see such a small difference between the batting average and the on-base percentage, of course, we're talking about a tiny walk rate. He did have his first walk of the season in Milwaukee, 1 walk in 77 plate appearances. I think it's less about the walk totals and more about just the at-bat quality and not chasing out of the zone. He knows he needs to work on it, and I think he's managed to be productive even with the chase, because if you throw it in the zone, the bat to ball skills and the hit tool has been pretty impressive, and the ability to go line to line to hit for power as well has just been fun to watch. And that doesn't even speak at all to the defense, which has been great to watch, and a .500 slugging, by the way, for Casey Schmitt. And so look, what I see is that the batting average on balls in play is .400, and it's going to come down, and then the numbers aren't going to look as good. But no one expects him, hopefully, to hit .342 all season. But chasing less will be a key. But he's just been a total shot in the arm and underrated. As I said numerous times coming into the season, people were down on the farm system at exactly the wrong moment because of some rankings. And anyway, Patrick Bailey is in that mix as well. A guy who at times was on some top 100 lists, but certainly not coming into this year. I didn't see him on any, and then he just has this meteoric rise. AA, plays there for 14 games, does exceptionally well. Goes to AAA, plays for 14 games, and honestly, his offense wasn't good in AAA, but it was a small sample. And then they call him up to the major leagues with Joey Bart going on the IL, and what has Patrick Bailey done? Well, he's hit .355 with a .375 on base and .645 slugging. It's obviously a small sample. He's only played 9 games. Once again, it feels like he's been around. I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like he's been around a while. But it's only been 9 games for Patrick Bailey, but just very impressive offense. And then the defense, just like with Casey Schmitt, it's a similar story. You're just getting kind of beyond his years maturity and defensive ability from a guy who had his 24th birthday on yesterday when the Giants pounded the Pirates, and Patrick Bailey was one of those guys with 3 hits. He went 3 for 5, drove in 4 runs, no strikeouts. So things are looking up for a lot of these guys, and then there's more youth coming. I mean, we're talking Luis Matos is in AAA and doing well. Kyle Harrison is very close and could be an impact player for the Giants. So, like I said, down on the farm system at the wrong time. But turning the page, a key player for the Giants is Austin Slater. Apparently, he doesn't always get the respect he deserves. So we're going to dive into the mini controversy about Austin Slater and his return and how he made an immediate impact. We'll get into that in just a minute. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because right now, new customers can get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Uh, I love everything about FanDuel, including great promotions every day, the safe and secure app. You don't want to be working on some janky app, right? And FanDuel is totally legit and safe and secure. Plus, you can get paid, not can, you do get paid instantly for your winnings. There's no better place to bet all of the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon and get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's fanduel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, as promised, the return of Austin Slater and the mini controversy on Twitter that surrounded the return of Austin Slater. Basically, somebody I had never heard of who does radio, and I mean no disrespect whatsoever to this guy, but he was like, I'm looking forward to the day when we don't have to see Austin Slater anymore because he represents the purgatory of the Giants. And I'm just going to kind of explain why I think that's wrong and I disagree. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, we're going to be breaking down a big game 2 against the Pirates where the Giants have a chance to win another series. They just keep winning series, and then if you win game 2, you put yourself in a position where you can potentially sweep. And the Giants, 2 games over 500, it's an important point to kind of try to take off and get away from that 500 mark and get some separation from it. So we'll be breaking it down tomorrow. Can they do it? The Giants play the Pirates tonight at 6:45 Pacific. John Brebbia, opener, who's done a great job in that role, by the way. He's like almost always throws a scoreless inning. I probably jinxed him. He doesn't always throw a scoreless inning, but he'll be the starter, and we'll see who follows. I imagine Sean Manaea will be in the mix. So catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Giants. So the Austin Slater conversation, again, no disrespect to this guy. He took it well. There was a lot of like quote tweeting from what he said, which was like, okay, Austin Slater was activated, the Giants tweeted it out, and this guy who's a host for a local radio sports radio station just said he looked forward to, I'll read you the exact line. No disrespect, he said, but with the youth movement, it'll be nice to no longer see names like Austin Slater. Yaz is barely holding on as well, and I know right now the prospects that are up are infielders. It just feels like there's a group of players that represent the Giants' purgatory. And I just think that's wrong. There certainly were in the past, and maybe still are some players who represent that purgatory. But it was more guys like Jeff Samardzija, Johnny Cueto, Joe Panic, frankly, no disrespect to Panic. But honestly, even like Evan Longoria, no disrespect, but I don't think like if you're calling out Slater specifically, I think it's wrong because and I quote tweeted this as well, not to stir up any controversy, but just because the guy obviously has a little bit of influence being a radio host, so people listen to that, and I felt compelled to like share how valuable Austin Slater really is, and that he doesn't represent purgatory. He represents helping them win, which is the whole point. As Giants fans, I think we can all agree that that's what we want more than anything, is to win. Also, you want some excitement. People called the 107 win team boring in some ways, but with the youth they have now, plus guys like Austin Slater who do so well at what he does, that's a recipe for success. And so he came back, made an immediate impact, did what he does, which is crushed left-handed pitching. So my tweet was that Slater has been the 5th best hitter in baseball by weighted runs created plus, which is like probably the gold standard for offensive metrics. I could do a whole episode explaining exactly what it is, but it's similar to OPS plus, just a little bit more refined, I think. And anyway, he's 5th best in Major League Baseball against left-handed pitching in this metric since 2020 among players with at least 400 plate appearances. He's hit 294 against lefties since 2020 with a 394 on base, which is the highest mark in Major League Baseball against left-handed pitching since 2020 with a 508 slugging. It's a 149 weighted runs created plus, which, like I said, is fifth best in Major League Baseball. He slots in between on the leaderboard Trey Turner, who's, I guess, fourth best with a 159 weighted runs created plus. And below Austin Slater is Austin Riley, this, dangerous, like extremely dangerous, lethal right-handed big bat star on the Atlanta Braves. And so you're getting production somewhere between Trey Turner and Austin Riley anytime Austin Slater steps up to the plate against a left-handed pitcher. And so it's kind of insane to say that he represents a purgatory. No disrespect. Again, the guy took it well. He wasn't trying to start any fights or anything. And people can have their opinions. I just thought it was wrong, like incorrect. And then I remembered that there was this video that had just been posted literally on May 25th, just 5 days ago, where Clayton Kershaw, the greatest pitcher of his generation, it's like a little podcast with Mookie Betts and Clayton Kershaw. And Mookie asks Clayton, who are your top 5 toughest at bats? And he names off Manny Machado, Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, like the best right-handed hitters in the National League. And then he said, but also sometimes it's those platoon righties. And then he literally named Austin Slater and Wilmer Flores in like a short list of the toughest at bats for him. And like, think about it. Like I said, when he's facing a lefty, Slater has been a top 5 hitter in the game since 2020. And it's a significant number of plate appearances. Like I said, minimum 400 plate appearances, just tons of damage. He's gotten to Kershaw a lot. And so anyway, I mean, point taken, right? Like, let's not beat a dead horse. Austin Slater is a valuable member of the team. And sure enough, left-handed pitcher on the mound for the Pirates. They quickly, activate Slater off the IL. He had a short little rehab assignment in Sacramento, and Slater goes 3 for 6 with 4 runs driven in. He hit a double and he hit a home run. And so, point taken, I hope. And the guy said, yeah, I was wrong. But then he ends up saying, like, I don't want to be a part of this, like, toxic group of Slater fans. But it's not toxic. It's just, like, telling it like it is and giving him the respect that he deserves. I think some people don't realize that, like how good he is against left-handed pitching. So it's just the truth. He helps the Giants win games. He did it yesterday. And he'll continue to do it as long as he's here. So coming up in just a minute, there's a roster crunch. Like, Slater came back, so they had to make a corresponding move. It was already a surprising move with optioning Tristan Beck, and they've got other guys, including Luke Jackson, who you may have forgotten about, but might be activated today, and that's going to require not only somebody off the Major League roster getting sent out to the minors, but also a corresponding 40-man move. So it's a serious roster crunch, and we'll get into it in just a minute. But first, all right, as promised, we are going to discuss the impending roster crunch, not just about Luke Jackson, who we mentioned a second ago, but what about Thairo? What about Joc Pederson? What about Joey Bart? They've got a Major League roster like full of guys who are performing well, and then a bunch of players coming back who like are guaranteed spots, like I said, with Thairo and Joc and Luke Jackson, who was a significant acquisition in the offseason coming off Tommy John surgery. So anyway, thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we'll be talking about, can the Giants keep it going? They're red hot, and they're facing the Pittsburgh Pirates. And as I said yesterday, coming into the game, Pirates are outperforming expectations for them. They were expected to be one of the worst teams in the league. They actually started out through 28 games. They had the best record in the National League at 20-8, but now their record is 26-27. So they've only won 6 games and they've lost 19 since that 20-8 start. So Giants will look to continue to keep kicking them while they're down. They face the Pirates tonight at 6:45 Pacific. facing the righty Oviedo. I think it's Johan Oviedo, who has a 4.70 ERA. Like I said, Brebbia getting the start for the Giants. You can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Giants. So, uh, getting to the roster crunch. By the way, just shout out also, random shout out, Brandon Crawford had himself a nice game yesterday as well. So it's good to see him. I have nothing but the utmost respect for Crawford, and I hope it never came across as anything different than that when I've said like Casey Schmitt was kind of taking over that shortstop spot, and Crawford is you can't stay good forever, and he's getting up there in age, and he really wasn't performing well offensively or defensively at times this season. But he had a nice game yesterday. He went 3 for 3 and also drew a walk and played some good defense. So great. And I think his most recent game, the last game in Milwaukee, was also good. So I wanted to just give a shout there to Crawford. But the roster crunch is looming, and it could start today with the possible activation of Luke Jackson, who you may have forgotten about. Uh, I didn't forget about him, but was not. It kind of snuck up on me that his eligibility to return was today or yesterday. Basically, they signed him in the offseason to be a big part of their bullpen, but he was coming off Tommy John, and so they knew he wasn't going to be ready at the start of the season. This is a guy who was a big part of that world champion Atlanta Braves 2021 bullpen, had a 1.98 ERA. Peripherals were not that good, not as good as that, but he had some really good seasons with the Atlanta Braves, and he's coming. Like, there's no question they envision him as part of their bullpen, and he could be activated. But he was on the 60-day IL, so like I said, not only do you have to make a corresponding move on the major league roster, but you also have to make a corresponding move on the 40-man roster, which is currently full. And so, like, you have to DFA somebody or put somebody on the 60-day injured list. So Susan Slusser of the Chronicle speculated that you could see a DFA of somebody like Matt Beatty, and I tend to agree that that's a distinct possibility. When it comes to like optioning guys to get them off the major league roster, there are certainly some candidates. I was surprised yesterday that when Slater was activated, the corresponding move was to option Beck as opposed to optioning Bryce Johnson. But I kind of get it now because Beck had just pitched the previous day, and so he obviously wasn't going to pitch yesterday. And so they wanted to keep Johnson while he could actually play yesterday. And I think today, if they activate Jackson, that Bryce Johnson is the one who will get optioned. And you could possibly see like a DFA of somebody like Bryce Johnson. He was already DFA'd before. I don't think they want to do that, but nothing is really off the table. They, like I said, they did do this last year. They DFA'd him when they needed a 40-man spot. And so it's possible it could be him. I think Beatty is probably more likely. David VR is also an option candidate, but with Thairo Estrada on the injured list, I think that VR kind of fills the role of a guy who's out versus Bryce Johnson with Slater back doesn't have like a real role. And so I expect Bryce Johnson will be optioned when Luke Jackson comes back. And when we talk about Thairo Estrada coming back, I think that's a simple optioning of David VR. When we talk about Joc Pederson coming back, it gets a little bit more. I guess Brett Wisely is another guy who can be optioned, and probably that would be him. So I guess there are kind of answers for all of those moves, but the real question for me is when Joey Bart comes back or is eligible to come back. I don't really see. You've already optioned Wisely in this scenario. You've already optioned David VR, and you've optioned Bryce Johnson. So like there's nobody else that I can look to. I guess, I mean, on the pitching side, they're already currently at 14 pitchers and 12 position players, but I expect, or is it, no, sorry, there are 14 position players and 12 pitchers. But with Luke Jackson being activated and I think Bryce Johnson probably getting sent out, it would be 13 and 13. And so I don't know. I think Joey Bart, I've heard multiple reporters have said they plan to hold three catchers with Bart and Bailey and Sabol, but I don't necessarily see where the corresponding move would be. And so it's a possibility that somebody gets optioned. And right now, how do you option Patrick Bailey? And so it's possible that the solution is simply that you have to option Joey Bart, which would be unfortunate for him personally. And also, like, I just haven't loved what I've seen from Blake Sabol behind the plate. But then if he's not a catcher, what is he? When you say, okay, he's a DH, but when Joc Pederson is back, Joc Pederson is that left-handed DH. Then you say, okay, well, he's an outfielder, but then there's no room in the outfield. You've got Haniger and Conforto as everyday players, and then you've got a platoon that makes up a good everyday player with, like I said, Slater crushing lefties in the outfield when there's a lefty on the mound, and then Yastrzemski obviously has a role and a clear spot when there's a righty on the mound. And so it's, sometimes these problems take care of themselves. Somebody gets injured and it becomes a non-story. But I guess, I don't know how they carry all three of Sabol, Bart, and Bailey, given everything I just said, and who, I honestly just don't see it. Tell me if they could option like Ryan Walker, the reliever with the funky crossfire delivery, but then you'd be going with 14 position players and 12 pitchers for like an extended period of time. And I guess they could do that for like a few days, but at some point something has to give. And I don't know what it would be. If Sabol struggles, they could trade for his full rights with the Pirates and they could option Sabol, but he's done enough to warrant being here. So anyway, like I said, it's a serious roster crunch, and it's a good problem to have when you have too many players that seemingly belong in your major league roster, and you don't have enough room for them all. That is a good problem to have, and that's where the Giants are, and that's why they're playing so well, frankly, is because they've got some good players playing well and some good young players proving that they belong here. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow, you know what we'll be discussing. Can the Giants beat the Pirates, stay red hot, improve to 29-26, improve on their current playoff position? The Giants play the Pirates tonight at 6:45 Pacific. Catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Giants. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like the show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. Helps me out a lot, so thanks in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening today. You are now Locked On Giants.